There's still plenty of work to do. Ole Miss might have a top 10 level roster, but that's not going to slow them down.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, a former staff member at Ole Miss and a 10-year veteran of the national media with Yahoo Sports. Also did a little time at WSMV as well. Thank you for tuning in on this Friday, What We Learned Friday. Today on the show, we talk about how Ole Miss can still improve their roster, even though 95% of roster building is done and over with. And fellow SEC coaches do not think highly of Mike Bianco's boys this spring. This is the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. We're free and available in all the podcast apps and YouTube. Thank you so much for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. And a special hello to the everydayers that make the show what it is. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bets are $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So I mentioned that roster building was about 95% done, and that's where it is. Whenever all of the high school and JUCO, both high school recruiting signing days have passed, we covered those on Wednesday. You can tune in to get our thoughts on the players coming in from high school, and go back to that Wednesday show and listen to that. The first transfer portal, which is the primary transfer portal window. You're going to hear me talk about primary and secondary windows as this moves forward. The primary window is basically already done. The next window will be the secondary window, and that happens from April 15th to April 30th. And Ole Miss has the opportunity to improve themselves, but how can they improve themselves? You have a player coming back like Ulysses Bentley IV. He's a really great running back. Ole Miss fans, they argued over and over again that at times Ulysses Bentley IV was the more effective running back out of him and Quinshon Judkins in 2022 or 2023. The problem with Ulysses Bentley IV is health, and that is the way it's been in each of his years at Ole Miss. He missed 6 or 7 games in 2022 with a broken bone and was not 100% at the end of the year, despite getting less than 100 carries. And I think he got hurt against Mississippi State, and he might have gotten hurt in the Peach Bowl as well. So whenever you see that, and that's happened over and over again, Ole Miss has to plan on the fact that it is a possibility that he could get nicked up during the season. If he is healthy, he is going to be the starter, and this offense is going to be very explosive for him playing. But Ole Miss has to have backups to backup plans. You have a top 10 level roster, sure, but a way that you can shore it up just a little bit is by making sure depth is there. Now, Ole Miss picked up a commitment from Logan Diggs, who tore his ACL in the ReliaQuest Bowl for LSU, transferred to Ole Miss. If he plays, it's going to be late, very late in the season. It's not going to be factoring in. He's a guy that could probably contribute some in the playoff should Ole Miss make it that far. The point is, Ole Miss needs to make it that far. So are you really okay with going into a football season with your 2 running backs being Ulysses Bentley IV and Kedrick Reescano? Nothing against those 2 players. Depth just becomes a concern because Logan Diggs is not going to be available. So I do think Ole Miss is going to pick up a running back in the late transfer portal window. In that secondary window, for whatever reason, in the primary window, like back in December, Ole Miss has like a 95% hit rate there. Just an unbelievably high number to think of players that just hit whenever they come in December. The players that miss, the players that aren't quite there, they come during the summer session for whatever reason. I do not know if this is the thing. This could all be completely coincidence, but that is happening at the moment. And whenever you look at Deion Smith and Marquise Willis coming in May, there's a little bit of skepticism that everybody has the right to have because of that, even though they're JUCO guys. Coming in the summers, just it's a big disadvantage over coming in the spring. You get a chance to learn the culture, how everything operates, and just get there in the fall and play football, while these people that get there in the summer, they're going to be going through this for the first time. They'll be swimming a little bit, and it'll be a little bit harder on them. We'll see. Deion Smith, like I said yesterday, has Randy Moss level ability at wide receiver. And his run after catch, he has an unbelievable catch radius. He makes contested catches, has really good hands. All of the stuff that you want, he can do. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be Randy Moss at Ole Miss. I'm saying he has that level of ability. And he also has a similar story. Deion Smith went from LSU to East Mississippi to Holmes Community College to Ole Miss. Randy Moss famously went to Notre Dame, to Florida State, and then up to Marshall. They both had kind of a varied journey to where they need to be. And Deion Smith is going to be a really good player. I think he's a one and done, for lack of a better word. I think he's going to come into school. He's going to be eligible for school. He is going to play for the season, and he is going to leave. I think that is the route that is going to happen with Deion Smith. So we'll see exactly how that works as well. Now, another piece that I think that Ole Miss needs to get better, they got in the December transfer portal, in the primary window, they got Princely Amonmielen, who had 39 tackles last year, 10.5 tackles for loss, 17 quarterback hurries, 7 sacks. He is the top pass rusher that was in the portal this year, period. Ole Miss made their pass rush better by getting him. Now, Ole Miss committed Tyler Barron early in the process, and he was committed for a little bit of a while, and then all of the Tennessee players ended up going to Louisville. But the player that Ole Miss was kind of looking at, in BJ Green, they ended up taking Barron because they were close enough, and it was a bird in the hand type situation. But after you say no and you make that remark, it's going to be difficult to pivot back to another player. BJ Green ended up going to Colorado. I get it. I mean, he gets to be a starter on a 6-6 team. It's all going to work out for him, but Ole Miss probably still needs that defensive end. You know, you have TJ Dudley that played the role that Cedric Johnson played in the bowl game. I think TJ Dudley is going to play more of a straight up linebacker this time. But who's going to be the complementary end? You got Jared Ivey, who is an all-conference level player, who is going to be a strong side defensive end and going to be a very good one. Don't get me wrong. You got Princely Amonmielen. That is fantastic. And you have Walter Nolan and J.J. Pegues. That front four of that defensive line is the best that Ole Miss has had probably since the Red Death defense. Seriously. But I would feel better personally if Ole Miss went out and got another defensive end. Find an Isaac Ukwu out there just like they did a year ago and bring him in and kind of take off. I think that the edge that they got out of Pahokee, Florida last year, I forgot his name real quick. I'm having a brain surgery moment. I think his developmental step up. I think he might play a little bit. I think there are several edges that Ole Miss has had recruited for that type of position. So we'll see exactly how that goes. Now, the one thing that I know about this defensive unit is that they are kind of built for a four-man front. Princely plays a jack, which is that hybrid defensive end and linebacker role. That's what Cedric Johnson did a year ago. But you're going to see them line up in a straight four-man more so than that hybrid thing, I do believe. I think they want Princely Amonmielen to get after the quarterback. And I can't say that I blame them. I can't say that I blame them at all. And it's pretty interesting indeed to see what's going on. Now, Thanks again for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day, and we're just getting started. Listen, couple things. We're going to talk about the cornerback position where I think that Ole Miss needs to add a little bit in the secondary window there. And Tuesday night, Chris Beard may have unlocked this Rebels team, and we'll tell you how. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super duper bets. You know, what I love about the game is everything but the game. I'm a Saints fan. So one game I was really invested in, actually the football game, but I like the ambiance of it. I like everything around it. I like the fact that it is essentially an American holiday. And you can, bet and use your FanDuel app and all of this stuff, or you can just enjoy the fact that there's a Brent Musburger documentary. There's so many different ways to enjoy the game, but just playing in the game is not the only way that you get a W. FanDuel has a lot of ways for you to get in the season with a W or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win the Super Bowl, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, what color Gatorade, coin toss, how many points will be scored, all of that, those prop bets that are so fun, they provide those options for you as well. New customers can join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Before we transition over into the basketball stuff, there is another position that I think that Ole Miss probably, it would serve them in roster building if they go out and recruit one of these players, and that's another cornerback. I realize that the cornerback room, they got a Morian Walker, they got Trey Amos, and they got a whole bunch of people that can play the position, including John Saunders and Yam Banks. They can all play corner. But if available, if the right guy comes along, I think you would be all right. I can see a situation where the starting outside guys at cornerback is Chris Graves and Trey Amos, right? And then in the safety position, you have Yam Banks or John Saunders or those guys, because Pete Golding has been really effective of playing those guys on the inside. Good ball skills, everything. They're nice ball hawks. I get all of that. I think another corner, so you can basically put a Morian Walker on one side, maybe the field corner, maybe the boundary corner. I'm not 100% sure. But that next corner that steps up and takes a little bit of the pressure off of stuff, that little bit of depth could be the difference between winning and losing against Georgia the first week in November, the second week in November. That is how important that is. I mean, we've seen all over, like, people that have listed the top 10 football games in 2024. Ole Miss and Georgia is on that list on every single one of them. Just a massive, massive football game. And the implications can be, honestly, what the Alabama-LSU game used to be, the way we thought of that. Remember the Tennessee and Florida game? That's what this Ole Miss versus Georgia game could be, depending on how you build up to this game. And I talked on yesterday's podcast about how Ole Miss fans should look at this as like a race, to where Ole Miss is tuning up their car to get that little bit of extra horsepower to win the race, as opposed to getting in the race, which Ole Miss has been doing for the last 40 years. So Ole Miss is in the race. They're in it. This is going to be about fine-tuning their roster and getting everything ready to go to make it something special. Now, one thing I'd like to talk about is basketball. Chris Beard kind of did something interesting Tuesday night against South Carolina. South Carolina, for those who do not know, got out to about a 17-point lead to start the second half of the game. Chris Beard took out Jaemyn Brakefield and Juju Murray. Austin Nunez played a good bit. A couple other players were shifted around, and all of a sudden they chipped away, and Ole Miss almost came all the way back. It felt like a situation where Chris Beard unlocked a little bit of the defense. Now, if you look offensively, let's take Jaemyn Brakefield's numbers, and this is conference only. Against conference team, he's averaging nearly 13 points a game, but only 3.3 rebounds a game. His assist number is fine. His rebound number is not, because he is in this offense being asked to play a lot of 4 and some 5. There's a situation where Chris Beard needs Jaemyn Brakefield to play better than he has on the glass. And against South Carolina, that really got abused a little bit. They abused that, got some layups, got all of that stuff. It started to look like the second half versus Auburn with Jaemyn Brakefield. So Chris Beard took him out of the ball game. It was almost like, I think Tim Thomas said this best. Okay. Chris Beard was willing to throw in the towel on that Tuesday night game to prove a point. That's why the decision to sit those guys down happened. It was to prove a point to the rest of them. And by goodness, they almost came all the way back. They had 3 possessions where the ball was in the air with a chance to tie the game. They just didn't make any of those 3 shots. If Ole Miss makes any of those 3 shots, it is a tie game on the road at the Colonial Life Arena in Columbia, South Carolina. Now, after seeing how the second half of that game went, I am really interested to see how it goes against the Kentucky Wildcats on Tuesday night. Will we have a change in the starting lineup? Will we attack things a little bit differently? Now, Rupp Arena historically has been a house of horrors for Ole Miss. Ole Miss has struggled almost as much as anywhere in Rupp Arena. They haven't won very often. Ole Miss is going to be a considerable underdog in this game. But Ole Miss is going to go up there and fight. They're going to call. This is a culture game, for lack of a better word, for Chris Beard and his team. This is a game where you go out just to prove a point that, no, you're good enough. You're going to have to earn this. You might beat me, but you're going to have to earn it. And the final score looks like, honestly, Tuesday night, where South Carolina won by 3. What you don't want to have happen is what happened at Auburn, what happened at Tennessee, to where good offensive teams kind of were able to have their way with you. And games got out of control in a hurry. And we'll see exactly how that goes, honestly. I like Jaemyn Brakefield. Great offensive player. He was so clutch on the free throw line. He's going to be instrumental for Ole Miss moving forward. Him and Juju Murray both. They're going to have to bear down on the defensive side of the ball, because Chris Beard, honestly, has just gotten to the point where he's kind of done with it. He's kind of over it. If you're not going to outscore people, you need to stop people, or you're not going to win any basketball games. Now, Ole Miss is what, 18-5, 18-6, somewhere in there. They're fine. They're pretty much where they thought they needed to be. Win the game at Kentucky if you can. If not, you have 2 games against Missouri. You have the Georgia Bulldogs. You have Alabama Crimson Tide, and they look at the schedule, one of the most unbelievable sandwich opportunities for the Alabama team that I've seen. They play Kentucky, then they go on the road at Ole Miss, and then they play Tennessee. So it's like ranked on the road at Ole Miss, Tennessee. So if you're ever going to be able to get that team, that's probably then. So we'll see exactly what happens. All I know is sometimes these methods work. Sometimes, as Tim Thomas said, these severe emotional events works. So we'll see exactly how that goes for Ole Miss against Kentucky. Still more to come on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. SEC coaches do not think highly of Ole Miss this spring. What do we think? Stand by. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day, and shout out to the everydayers. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. For your second listen, go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 stream channel. Be part of history. Now, the coaches' rankings, the preseason polls, and that came out from the coaches yesterday, and they are not a huge fan of Ole Miss baseball at the moment. If you look at the preseason All SEC team, there is nary an Ole Miss player on it. If you look at Florida's kind of got them all over the place, and I think Florida is going to be really, really good. But if you look down, they got Ole Miss preseason predicted to be number 6 in the SEC West. This is the last year of divisions. Mississippi State 7th. So I guess if you're going to be 6th and ranked over somebody, there's no better team to be ranked over. But you're still predicted 6th in the SEC West, behind Auburn and Alabama, behind A&M, LSU, and Arkansas. Now, there's some really good ball players, and SEC baseball is always going to be a bear, but it always makes you nervous coming off that. Now, a lot of this could be the fact that Ole Miss is coming off an SEC season where they just didn't win many games last year. It just kind of all fell apart last year. And a lot of that is like what's coming back. And Ole Miss has gotten an injury to Xavier Rivas, who is going to need Tommy John surgery. And you have all these transfers coming in that you're hoping works out, but you can't guarantee it. You've got young players coming in. I mean, you got Luke Hill, the shortstop, that's supposed to be all world at shortstop, but you need to see him play. Andrew Fisher. I mean, Derek Vandegrift has done a fantastic job over the last couple of months on the SEC After Dark YouTube channel, getting interviews with these Ole Miss baseball players. So if you want to hear what any of them have to say, I mean, there's a bunch of them right there with the Dids in the Dugout show. So I'm, let's say, cautiously optimistic about this lineup. I've heard that TJ Quinn took a step. I heard that Grayson Saunier took a step. I heard that Ole Miss they're going to knock the cover off the ball. So I'm just really interested to see what it will look like. And if everything goes the way, I imagine these rankings are going to be a little bit wrong. That's what I think about that. Anyway, Super Bowl is coming up on Sunday. I hate the Super Bowl. I think that's the nicest way that I can put it. Is I really do not like this Super Bowl. As a Saints fan that existed in the 80s, whenever the 49ers were just beating the crap twice a year out of the New Orleans Saints, there's a level of hatred that I had developed for the New Orleans Saints that's hard to explain. That said, this Kansas City Chiefs dynasty, I'm ready for it to be over. They're just so unlikable. There's so much that they do that is not likable. Now, they've taken steps like the State Farm commercials and everything with Andy Reid, where they try to humanize them, but it just doesn't work. And I honestly, I don't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm probably going to be rooting for the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday. And that's absolutely nuts that I am rooting for this team that just basically helped ruin my sainthood childhood. And now I'm sitting there going, hey, it'd be nice if Kyle Shanahan was able to get a ring Sunday. It's so weird to think about that happening. But I genuinely hate this Super Bowl. Now, the NFL Today documentary that they're airing before the game with Brent Musburger, and they're talking about like Jimmy the Greek and that era of when the NFL Today was something completely new. I'm going to watch that one with pins and needle. I might care about that more than the Super Bowl. But basically what I'm going to be doing Sunday afternoon is I'm going to be watching CBS. I'm going to see if there's anything technically that they're doing that I can steal for my show, this show. I'm going to see graphics wise if there's something new that I haven't ever thought of that I can build easily. And I'm going to enjoy the commercials, especially the Paramount Plus commercial, because the Throw the Kid commercial with Patrick Stewart's absolutely hilarious. So we'll see exactly how that goes. But I'm excited for the Super Bowl. I'm not excited for the game, if that makes sense. And in fact, put down in the comments, if you're watching this, what you're excited for about this game. Because honestly, for Super Bowl Sunday, I'm excited this time for everything but the football game. Now, I want the ancillary programming. I want all of that stuff. But the football game, I mean, either one of them wins. It's almost like a Mississippi State LSU game. You're rooting for a meteor in that game. It's just the way it works. I don't know. We'll see exactly how that goes. So put in the comments who you think is going to win the Super Bowl. Maybe put the score down below there as well. I know this is an Ole Miss. That's the reason I put it at the end of the podcast. I hope everybody has a good weekend. We're in about the worst 5 days or so for YouTubers that exist. And for college people, that is right after signing day, there's always a lull, and that goes to 3 or 4 days past the Super Bowl. And these two being so close together, I think that there is kind of a difficult thing. So I hope everybody enjoys this weekend. Have fun. I've got a couple of really cool interviews coming up, including one next week that is, I think everybody's going to be really cool with. So we'll see exactly how that goes as well. But thanks everybody for tuning in, and thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. Everydayers basketball season is in full swing. Baseball is getting ready to start, and we wait on the most anticipated football season ever. And you can hear about it all right here. But for your second listen, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. For your second listen, go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 stream channel. For those of you on YouTube, we'll send you there right now. Hotty toddy, everyone.